This video is brought to you by SurfShark VPN. Link and promo code in the description. So far in my YouTube career, I have been known to cancel whoever I please. If I have a problem with someone, I just make a video on them and point out all the problematic things they've ever done. And then my following on YouTube then goes and cancels them, and they lose all their sponsorships, they lose all their jobs, they lose their whole business, because that is how cancel culture works. You get a left-wing mob, you point out the things you don't like about someone, and then they are effectively cancelled. But what is there to cancel for someone who has cancelled everyone? Well, I guess today I'm going to cancel culture itself. So this video has been like a very long time coming. And of course, I know you guys all enjoyed the Kavernacle arc, and maybe I'm not done with cancelling people. I actually plan to cancel Brad Pitt in the future, maybe next week. But today I thought I would try and cancel culture and actually show how conservatives, the main people who complain about supposed cancel culture, actually do not like free market capitalism as much as they say, especially in what they call corporate censorship, or corporations cancelling people. Because what often happens is awful things that someone said get brought to light, and then a corporation makes a decision: do you stand by someone, or do you cancel them and not continue using them as part of your business and your strategy to make money? So in the case of Joe Rogan, far too profitable to get rid of for Spotify currently at the moment, but I'm sure if they ever drop him and decide it's worth paying him out and getting him off the platform, that is a calculated business decision in which they're trying to make as much money as possible. And like any good capitalist, if Joe Rogan found himself without any platform, then he could just make his own with all his lovely money, where he couldn't be cancelled ever. So in the video, we are going to talk about the complete right-wing hypocrisy and hysteria around cancel culture, and how cancel culture is not a new thing. Cancel culture actually doesn't really exist at all. It's just a way for right-wingers to whine about backlash to like their awful opinions and pretend somehow it's a war against free speech. Free speech which they don't actually care about in the first place, especially if you're a critic of them and stuff that they love and stand for. So this video is sponsored by SurfShark VPN. Now, SurfShark VPN keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all the information sent between your devices and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies or cyber criminals. So as you guys know, I am currently in Spain right now. And while I'm grateful to escape the eternal rain of the UK and getting to at least see the sun and the beach every day, there are some things I miss about good old Blighty. For one, I can't watch the Premier League highlights on the Sky Sports or BT Sports YouTube channels, or just watch the football in general on my laptop. But with Surfshark VPN, I can change my IP location on my device back to the UK to watch the highlights and other content that is region locked on YouTube. Also, right now in Spain, when I'm using mobile data, Reddit is inaccessible, but with Surfshark VPN, I can access the site no problem on 4G. Finally, as many of you know, I love my TV shows, but Netflix caters its content to specific regions. In the UK, two of my favourites, Vikings and Mr. Robot, are only available on other streaming services, but they are both on Spanish Netflix. So with this VPN, you can change your location and access these shows without having to buy more subscriptions. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in 65 countries. Speaking of the hacker vigilante show Mr. Robot, a VPN also encrypts your online data and helps to secure your personal information when you use public Wi-Fi. Surfshark's Clean Web feature blocks ads, trackers, malware, and phishing attempts, allowing you to surf the web safely. Masking your IP address is essential to becoming private online. A VPN makes sure that your city, country, and download history aren't linked to your identity. Surfshark does not monitor, track, or store what you do online. That means no connection or activity logs. It allows you to use one account on an unlimited number of devices, and Surfshark also offers you a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. Enter promo code Kavernacle for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Link is in the description and in my pinned comment. So I use the VPN to watch Dortmund getting absolutely spanked by Rangers. My girlfriend tonight said that she loves the VPN because she was able to watch something that she couldn't in Spain on her movie apps. But moving on from that, let's now get into the video. So I want to start with Joe Rogan here because Joe Rogan supposedly has been cancelled recently for platforming lots of people spewing medical misinformation on Spotify that signed him, was it like $200 million deal for exclusively getting the full podcast? So if you go on YouTube and just write like Joe Rogan cancelled, you get so much stuff like Joe Rogan responds to CNN's attempt to cancel him. Joe Rogan cancels the cancellers. Joe Rogan, wokeness will cancel us all. Joe Rogan responds to Spotify cancel culture lunatics. Joe Rogan got cancelled. Why is Joe Rogan being cancelled now? So here is a clip from his podcast where he talks about cancel culture and how wokeness is cancelling everything.
You can never be woke enough. That's the problem. It keeps going. It keeps going further and further and further down the line. And if you get to the point where you capitulate, where you agree to all these demands, it'll eventually get to straight white men are not allowed to talk. Right. Because it's your privilege to express yourself when other people of color have been silenced throughout history. It will be, you're not allowed to go outside because so many people were imprisoned for so many years. I mean, I'm not joking.
No, I know.
It really will get there. It's that crazy. You know, we just got to be nice to each other, man. And there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of this weirdness in our culture, and then that becomes their thing. Their thing is calling people out for their privilege, calling people out for their position. Crazy times. They want to like cancel a person because they think that that person is foul, or they want to be able to do it because it is kind of a game. Like if you can cancel someone and you get them in trouble, there's a lot of people that like go dig up old things that you said. They're definitely, it's not productive because like if you're spending all your time trying to attack a person versus trying to better yourself, you're not going to do as well.
100%.
You're wasting time. Like I don't have the time to do that. How do you have the time to do that?
Now, isn't that insanely ironic? The guy with like the most popular podcast on the entire planet who signed like $hundreds of millions exclusivity deal with Spotify to platform his podcast is really worried about being cancelled and cancel culture while he says this on one of like the biggest platforms in the world. And then you have stuff like this. Rumble offers Joe Rogan $100 million to bring the show to their video platform. So let's get into this a bit more. So Joe Rogan thinks he's being cancelled by the woke left. Everyone thinks Joe Rogan is being cancelled at this point in time. Joe Rogan seems to think sometimes he's a leftist, but he is a capitalist. Most people complaining about this are capitalists. Spotify is a corporation designed to make money, right? So Joe Rogan has said a lot of awful stuff lately. He's platformed a lot of awful guests. If vocal groups on the internet say this is like really problematic and Spotify take action in response to that, why do you think that is? So it's two reasons, isn't it? It's their public image, which they're worried about. And why are they worried about their public image? Because that will allow them to make more money. And if they did decide to get rid of Joe Rogan at a massive cost to them, I'm sure they'd have to pay him out a bunch of money. And that is a complete business decision because they're deciding that having this podcast exclusively on their platform is actually hurting their ability to make money. And conservatives think, because they think a lot of people involved in tech are somehow like massive communists and leftists, they think Spotify and other corporations are like bowing down to the woke mob, because as we all know, in America, a massively right-wing dominated country, a massive capitalist hellhole, we all know that the group that have the most power are the woke mob and leftists and communists. We know all these people have so much institutional power. Well, conservatives actually believe this, but that is complete fantasy. But in their conspiratorial mind, it's the woke mob taking over everything and cancelling everyone. But in the old days, what this would be is some guy says something dumb, people respond how they like, corporation decides course of action to maintain their profits and increase their profits. Now, I wish I was being cancelled on my exclusive podcast on one of the biggest streaming apps in the entire world, which they signed me up for hundreds of millions of dollars. And if I actually do get cancelled from that, I have another platform lined up to offer me $100 million. Because as we all know, that is how cancel culture works. You lose your job at one company, which have already given you hundreds of millions of dollars, and then you walk into a job at another company that are going to give you $100 million. Being cancelled just sounds awesome. Can someone please cancel me? Like, can I leave my job on YouTube and then walk into an even more lucrative job on Twitch next? Because this is the ridiculousness of what these people are saying. So of course, mainly conservatives are the ones crying about cancel culture. And it's because conservatives, of course, want to uphold the status quo, and a lot of their opinions are more backward and not progressive, meaning as the times change and people accept, new progressive things, and even people like in the center, liberals, even some center-right people, then you increasingly look backwards, and some of your language and some of your views rightly get a backlash because they're abhorrent. But isn't that our right as a free society to criticize your opinions? And I'm going to get back to the capitalist point a bit later, but in this capitalist system, it's all about the free market. And my power as a consumer is that if I do not want to consume your product because I find it morally wrong, then I can do that. If a bunch of us want to get together and boycott something, we can do that. I mean, technically we can do that, although a lot of countries are trying to make laws against groups like this going forward because conservatives really love the free market, don't they? So essentially, their problems with cancel culture are actually problems with free market capitalism. Now let's go into like conservative people involved in filmmaking who think they're being censored. So here is a good video and a tweet for you. Actor Kevin Sorbo says his production company has 30 movie scripts with crews and locations all lined up, but can't get people to finance any of them because he's conservative.
I've got 30 scripts in my production company right now at Sorbo Studios, and they're ready to go. I got crews, I got locations, I got everything for all of them. I'm just on the phone every day going to funders saying, guys, we need to change the culture here. And I keep telling these wealthy guys that I meet that throw millions of dollars at politicians, I say, I'll tell you right now, you have a better chance with me putting out movies like I do that reach a lot more people and have a better, more positive impact on them than any of these politicians are going to have. Trust me.
How sad. That's cancel culture in action, isn't it? No one wants to fund Kevin Sorbo's movies because he's a conservative. Not that Mel Gibson got cancelled, came back and made a massive movie that got loads of Oscars. Not that Tim Allen is like a pretty household name who keeps getting work. Not that Clint Eastwood is literally one of the most famous actors who's ever lived and keeps getting directing gigs into his 90s. These guys like to use this as a scapegoat. The problem is Kevin Sorbo acts and directs in completely god-awful movies like God's Not Dead, and there's like 4 of those movies. They're literally some of the worst movies that exist and literally only get funded because conservative organizations want to pump out propaganda. If this guy isn't getting funding for these movies, they must be even worse than usual. But that's the free market. If companies don't want to take a chance on your product, on your film, isn't that their right? Don't you conservatives constantly bang on about how in the free market everyone can make their own decisions on what they want to buy or what they want to fund? If society is really getting so leftist that, conservative films aren't doing well anymore, then I guess that's what's going to happen. Or it could be these movies are just really, really bad. Now, this translates to like the Gina Carano stuff. Now, I talk about this a lot, but I think it's like the perfect example of all of this hypocrisy in regards to so-called cancel culture. So here is Gina Carano, pretty up-and-coming actress who used to be a wrestler on films like Deadpool, has a pretty starring role in The Mandalorian season 1 and 2, but can't keep her mouth shut on social media, pushing fringe conspiracies and bigoted posts. And in the language of Disney, when they commented on this, they said her contract wasn't renewed for The Mandalorian season 3, which seems like that was always the plan, and Gina Carano was just trying to bait them into making a statement before she signed on with Ben Shapiro's movie studio to make a movie. And they paid a lot of money to get her. But again, is this what cancel culture looks like? Can I have some of this? Can I please be cancelled from starring on one of the biggest shows around at the moment and then get paid by a massive right-wing organisation to go star in their movies afterwards? It's clear that Gina Carano was told to stop posting this stuff multiple times, but didn't, and then Disney dropped her. So here is her talking with Ben Shapiro in a very emotional way that she doesn't want this to happen to anybody else.
So I'm obviously like so excited that you called. I was prepared to at any point get let go because I've seen this happen to so many people. you know, I've seen the looks on their faces. I've seen the bullying that takes place. They've quit Twitter, you know, they've quit speaking. They show up to their red carpets and they're depressed and they're sad and there's hard hearts there. And I was like, you're coming for me. I know you are. It's not a, they're making it very obvious through their employees that were coming for me. And so I was like, well, well then I'm gonna go down swinging then, and I'm gonna stay true to myself, and I'm gonna let that speak. And I think that's speaking. So when you called, I'm still like, my body still is shaking. You know, it's still devastating. But the thought of this happening to anybody else, especially like somebody who could not handle this the way I can, no, they don't get to do that. They don't get to make people feel like that. And if I buckle them, then little girls and little boys who are not getting they're not getting a good, fair shake at growing up right now. If I buckle, it's going to make it okay for these companies who have a history of lying to beeline and to do this to other people. And they've done it to other people.
I just love this so much because it's like, how can you not see that a corporation would not want to be associated with really, really right-wing fringe posts that you couldn't stop posting on social media? But again, these guys are always crying, are always complaining. Isn't this the free market they love so much? Like, if a corporation wants to make money, aren't they allowed to take actions within the law to make as much money as possible, according to you conservatives? If Gina Carano is making the Mandalorian brand, the Star Wars brand, the Disney brand toxic and is impacting the way they can make money, then in your economic system, isn't that their right to do it? And the thing is, I can't respect these conservatives because I don't see any of them saying like, yeah, like this is really, really bad. Like, I don't like this at all. But like in this free market system, Disney as a corporation is allowed to take action like this if they feel like that is the best way they can make profit. Why do these guys not actually like the economic system they simp so much for? They love capitalism when they're stealing the value of labor from their employees. They hate capitalism when the free market works in action and backlashes against certain people cause companies to take certain actions so they can continue making as much money as possible. They don't like that so much. In fact, they've invented a whole new phrase to make it seem like it's actually part of this woke agenda, the corporate woke agenda, because we all know everyone who works at Lucasfilm and Disney, all the board of directors, all the investors, they're all massive leftists who don't actually care about making money, they just care about pushing progressive social values. So moving on, I actually found some like really good articles about this, just to like bounce off these people's work and make it like even more clear that conservatives actually hate free market capitalism. They don't like free speech. They don't like the freedom of the consumer to choose what products they want to buy. They don't like the freedom of corporations to decide how to run their business. It seems like the conservatives are the ones trying to cancel everyone else for working within the free market system they love so much. So just when I was researching this stuff, sometimes you just stumble on like really good articles by like really random people. So there's one article on Medium by Ben Padlekis, graduate student in international security, political junkie, history buff, Star Wars fan. And I just like his article called Cancel Culture is Just Capitalism at Work, Conservatives. So what do I mean about this? Cancel culture is in many ways a modern form of ostracism, where if a public figure or company does an action that a significant group in society deems unworthy and in need of punishment, will push for such a punishment. This ostracization may come in the form of a loss of employment or revenue, companies facing boycotts, loss of office. So when someone does something wrong, they're in turn cancelled for that action. So how is cancel culture a form of capitalism? To put it simply, this is just another factor that companies must take into account when dealing with the markets. Just as companies have to consider the price quality of their goods, a consumer behavior trend amongst younger generations is the social responsibility culture of the company making the goods. For example, H&M or other fashion clothes brands face backlash from consumers for their labor practices overseas, even though H&M may put out a decent product for a decent price. This is the consumer doing what could be called voting with their dollar. The consumer is saying that they see the company's actions and do not approve of them, and so will not use their money there. As a result, it is up to the company to change its ways or continue to face a loss in revenue. So when a company does change their ways, this is just capitalism at work. The company is responding to market forces. But what about people losing their jobs? So what about them losing their jobs? The same principle applies in this regard. If a consumer refuses to shop at a company because of an employee's actions, then that company, according to the principles of capitalism, should remove the troublesome individual to maintain maximum revenue. But don't you see conservatives doing that? I laugh when I hear this and can recite so many examples to show that neither end of the political spectrum is innocent of this. Most of the time I just need to name Nike as a company that many on the right boycott, and most of the time I hear back I will never buy from them. That is when I point out they are falling into the same cancel culture behavior. Therefore they would be hypocritical to bemoan cancel culture when they fall into the same behavior. Cancel culture is just capitalism, your dollars being invested based on your beliefs. So another article on Medium, it isn't cancel culture, it's accountability and capitalism. One of the great ironies here is that Republican leaders and people like Donald Trump Jr. are using the term cancel culture when what they really mean is capitalism, something they fully embraced once upon a time, right up there with God and guns. When Don Jr. whines about the few Dr. Seuss books pulled and calls it cancel culture, what he isn't acknowledging is that Dr. Seuss Enterprises voluntarily ceased publication of some of its books due to the problematic and hurtful portrayals of people. It had nothing to do with politics or culture and everything to do with money. It was simply capitalism in action. Name changing and rebranding happen all the time. It isn't the work of a cancel culture mob. It happens because the current model isn't working or became bad for business, whether suddenly or over a period of time, and that business has every right to do as they please, which generally means realizing what's in their best interest. Often it's in their best interest to make a change if they want their business to continue growing and prospering. So I like those articles there, and I particularly like the point about Nike because, you know, the Colin Kaepernick stuff, the Nike ads, and the conservatives like burning their Nike shoes. And I know you Americans call it Nike and that's the proper pronunciation, but in the UK nearly everyone calls it Nike. I don't know why we call it Nike. I know it's not correct, but most people call it that. But yeah, they were burning their shoes, they were cancelling Nike. And the thing is, they think Nike has gone woke and that's why they're cancelling them, where most of us know Nike is an awful company using really exploitative labour in poorer nations to make its product and to make as much profit as possible. Putting like a woke face on their product doesn't make me like them more as a company. It doesn't mean they've suddenly become communists and leftists. It just means they're trying to appeal to certain markets in certain countries. Companies always tailor their products to certain markets. The same company that has a woke marketing campaign in the United States is not going to do that in Saudi Arabia. For a group of people who push capitalism down everyone's throat, claim it's like the best system ever that's freed us all, they certainly do not like it at all. So cancel culture isn't always about like massive corporations. Sometimes it can be just like individual opinions. Now, there was a really funny article I saw the headline for, so I thought I'd go into a story a bit more. Rav Aurora, what it's really like to be cancelled and how I overcame it. So this guy wrote this article about white privilege, and he's basically saying it's not really a problem, and then he got massive backlash about it, saying that he has been cancelled. So let's get into this. Basically downplays like white privilege in America, and he says, these facts challenging the prevailing progressive notion that America's institutions are built to universally favour whites and oppress minorities. On the whole, whatever systemic racism exists appears to be incredibly ineffectual or even non-existent, given the multitude of groups who consistently eclipse whites. Overall, I can think of several privileges I have benefited from that are arguably more significant than white privilege. Roughly speaking, my family has more wealth than many in my social circle, including my friend who texts me to atone for his white privilege. This would be a form of class privilege. So this guy is really butthurt. He got a massive backlash. So he wrote another article in 2021 saying what it's really like to be cancelled and how I overcame it. And he says, last year he became one of the cancel culture victims. Soon after my piece called The Fallacy of White Privilege appeared in this newspaper in November 2020, it went viral, leading to an interview with the Hills Saga Engetti on his show Rising, and later an appearance on the Adam Carolla show. On social media, I lost friends, former classmates, colleagues, sports teammates, and social connections. I noticed my private tight-knit Instagram following declined from 500 to 350 followers. One of my best friends since 7th grade blocked me on Instagram for views he considered critical of BLM. I have not spoken to him since, despite seeing him at a recent social gathering where he ignored me. This may sound juvenile and trivial, but when social media has increasingly replaced real social interactions during the pandemic, the ostracism took a heavy toll. At 19, I felt like I was born in the wrong generation. The handful of young moderates in my social circle who support my work messaged me in private saying they respected my views but unable to publicly support me or share them on social media. One friend said, I loved your appearance on Ben Shapiro, man, but don't tell anyone I said that. My views also affected my job, working remotely as a content creator. A month later, I published this this essay. I expected more remote tasks from my employer. I mysteriously received nothing for weeks, something that never happened before. Finally, my boss sent me a brief text telling me to remove my affiliation with his company from my LinkedIn profile as I am no longer an employee. As a result, I lost out on a 1K paycheck that summer, which I received every couple months, a modest but much needed amount that I was paying towards my college tuition. But now I no longer fear the backlash from my contemporaries, media figures, or professors. In many ways, the outrage over my dissent has reached its peak. Any new assault on my character by local newspaper editors or anyone else will have little influence or impact my mental state or work. But one thing is clear, the reputational cost for dissenting from what the correct views are high. So this gets into the final part of my video, and that is accountability. So this guy is moaning he's been cancelled for publishing an essay on the New York Post, which is a hugely popular outlet, downplaying white privilege during the time of immense social upheaval because of these Black Lives Matter protests back in 2020. You chose to do that. You chose to publish your work there. You went on Ben Shapiro's show. You went on Adam Carolla's show. You went on The Hill's show, right? You had this massive platform. You chose to speak out. You chose to do that. The same way, every time I sit in front of a microphone, I choose to speak. I choose to put my opinion out there. When you are on a big platform and you're putting your voice out there, you have to accept, as you become a public figure, you can have your opinions criticized. Like, for example, if I publish a video that is highly controversial and people don't like it, then I'm going to be criticized. I'm going to be cancelled, as you say. I'm going to have to accept the consequences of what I have said. If that means loads of people on Patreon will stop being patrons, if that means loads of people will unsubscribe from this channel, loads of people will dislike the video, and loads of people on Twitter will distance themselves from me, then that is what I have to accept because I'm on a public platform. You cannot go around with your opinion and say in all these different places and then be shocked and feel like you've been oppressed when you have backlash against that, especially when someone like him is like objectively wrong and writes a very, very tasteless article. Getting dragged on social media, getting ratioed on social media for really, really bad takes. Yes, it may hurt your mental health. Yes, it may hurt to see friends turn their backs on you, but if you reveal who you really are through your opinions on this massive platform, your friends are allowed to do that. I don't want to be friends with someone who has like insane politics. If this was one of my friends who wrote this article, I'd probably stop being friends with them as well. That's not cancelling someone. That's me not wanting to associate with someone like you because I want to have friends who share my values. Now, these people cannot stand accountability. And even when they're being promoted by the right wing, loads of people who agree with them, loads of people who will publish their work, they're just sad that not everyone agrees with them. How can you all disagree with me? How can you not accept my truth, me, a 19-year-old knucklehead who is writing white privilege barely exists, when there is like visible evidence circulating the entire world this does exist? But it reminds me of the whole like SJW stuff, the safe space stuff. Oh, do you need a safe space? Do you need to like be coddled from other opinions? Conservatives are just constantly projecting. They say that like everyone hates capitalism and they love capitalism, but when capitalism works in action, they actually hate it. They say they love free speech and the freedom to disagree, but when you actually disagree with their opinions and maybe don't be friends with people who have awful opinions, they say they're being cancelled. It's just another symptom of conservatives constantly whining about being held accountable for their actions, which often damage people. But yeah, go write articles on the New York Post. Don't whine when people don't like them. Yeah, have any guests you want on your massive podcast. Don't whine when people don't like you. Especially don't whine when you're a multi-millionaire on an exclusive deal with Spotify, the biggest network on earth, and complain you're being censored by the woke left. These points may seem like really, really simple, but conservatives need to 100% accept this stuff, because the reason I can't accept conservative arguments or even respect conservatives is they're not consistent at all. And these people who frame themselves like libertarians or classical liberals, defenders of free speech, don't actually like free speech. So there we go. I've effectively cancelled cancel culture. Now cancel culture no longer exists. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you want to follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram, if you want to join our community, join my subreddit in the description. And if you want to support my work, please check out my Patreon. This video is brought to you by SurfShark VPN. Link and promo code in the description. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.